To be so.
Mr Speaker.
I call the honourable member Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. First of all, I'd also like to pass on my regards to Alan Peachy and wish him a speedy recovery and good health in retirement. I would also like to pass on my thanks to Dennis LaPlante, the security guard, Mr Chair, who saved this poor individual from jumping down here or whatever he was trying to do. He has suspected broken ribs.
Order. I've just cautioned the previous speaker. You cannot refer to events that happened in the gallery, and it's Speaker's ruling 8/4.
Mr Speaker, I also want to mention that John Key, when this happened, said, and I quote, "You should be ashamed of yourselves. That's down to you guys," end quote. All I want to say, Mr Speaker, is I think Mr Key...
Point of order, the Honourable Tohinari.
Not less than a minute ago, you told that Speaker that he was not to refer to the incident.
Order. There's a point of order on the floor. Order.
To the incident in the gallery. He has done it again. That is the third time.
Order. No, I will hear the member.
Mr Speaker, what I'm referring to is something that the Prime Minister mentioned when he was sitting in the House. Right over here, Mr Speaker.
Well, the issue has been dealt with, but I again caution the member that he must not refer to something that happened in the gallery. There is a Speaker's ruling, 8/4, and the member is warned.
Yes, thank you, Mr Speaker. All I would like to say to Mr Key...
Mr Harney, I've already dealt with the issue, but I'll hear the honourable member.
Says in Speaker's ruling 8/4, sir, a member is not in order in referring to what is happening in the gallery. I seek your ruling on the word "is". It says present tense.
It does say present tense, Mr. Hanari, but can I say that in keeping with the situation we've had in the House today, I think it's entirely appropriate, the ruling that I've made. I call the honourable member Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. All I would like to say is that Mr Key actually said, "You should be ashamed of yourselves. That's down to you guys," when he was looking at Phil Goff. And all I would like to say to Mr Key is I think he needs to take a good, hard look in the mirror. And I'll leave it at that. To Mr Williamson, to quote a former Governor of California, "I'll be back." Now, Mr Speaker, what I would like to do is I would like to quote from an article by Gareth Morgan and Susan Guthrie. Gareth Morgan is a well-known economist and economic commentator in this country, and he has said, and I quote, "At last we have arrived at the point where the most conservative proponents of market economics admit that the past 30 years, since Rogernomics and Thatcherism were unleashed, has resulted in a serious distortion of our tax regime. The only opposition to significant reform is now the ugly, hard right rump which favours jungle economics." He went on to say, and I quote, "It is indeed a revolution that has swept the world's financial press as finally there's recognition that the damage wrought from policies that have allowed greater and greater wealth disparity in the most developed countries. Taken together with so-called taxation reform that in effect has exempted the rich from tax on the credit-fuelled capital gains, we have ended up with a grotesque polarisation of wealth." I would like to repeat that. We have ended up with a grotesque polarisation of wealth. Well, Mr Speaker, only Labour in this House has been listening to the IMF, the OECD, the World Bank, Warren Buffett, the vast majority of tax practitioners in this country, and all but two OECD...
Order.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the honourable member Stuart Nash.
Sorry, Mr Speaker, I'm not too sure what Speaker's ruling it is or standing order it is, but I'm led to believe that a Speaker cannot leave his original seat to come down to another seat and interject in a way like Mr Quinn just has.
Point of order, the honourable member Quinn.
The particular ruling that the member refers to actually refers to advancing your position for the purpose of interjection. I think it is well acknowledged that my beautiful baritone voice carries magnificently across this House.
Order. Members referring to Speaker's ruling 63(1) and 3. It also goes on to note, Mr Quinn, that when a person does move to facilitate interjection, that if it continues and it becomes overriding, then the member can be asked to go back to the original seat to interject. I haven't done that yet, but I am listening. I call the honourable member Stuart Nash.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, only Labor has a plan to truly reform the tax system. Only Labor has a plan to ensure that all New Zealanders pay their fair share of tax. Mr Speaker, Labor will put money back into the pockets of all New Zealanders, not only the very wealthy. Labor will make the first $5,000 tax-free. We will increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and we will take all GST of fresh fruit and vegetables so every New Zealander has the chance to make healthy choices. Mr Speaker, our tax reform will allow us to pay off debt and keep our state assets. National's plan includes keeping a flawed tax system and selling state assets. Labor will reform the tax system, making it fairer for all, and Labor will never, ever sell state assets. We will never sell our power companies. We will never sell Air New Zealand, and Labor will never sell Kiwibank. Mr Speaker, in New Zealand, under this national government, we have seen tax cuts for the very wealthy, paid for by an increase in GST for everyone. In fact, Mr Speaker, the increase in GST was done even though John Key stood in front of the people of New Zealand and said he would not increase GST. And he did. He promised he wouldn't, and he did. So all New Zealanders paid for the tax cuts for the very wealthy. And Mr Speaker, let me give the House an example. If someone earns $1 million a year, and about 700 New Zealanders do, they received a tax cut of $1,000 a week extra. Someone on the median wage in Napier received around $11 a week. Very definitely not enough to cover the increase in the cost of living. Mr Speaker, that simply is not fair at all, and Labor is the only choice.
I call the Honourable Minister Hekia Parata. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā.